Johnson covers those New Orleans Saints for The Advocate. Jumps aboard here as he does every Thursday. Luke, how we doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. I'm going to leave this open-ended. Your thoughts on Mickey Loomis's press conference earlier this week?
I think he was trying to come out and put on a good face. I think he has been kind of feeling or understanding I don't really know what the right word is for it, but the general kind of distaste of the fan base with kind of the state of where things are right now with the Saints organization. I think he's been hearing that and feeling that. And I think he was trying to come out and put a good spin on it as much as he could. But I do think there was quite a bit of spin in that press conference. I'll just kind of leave it that way.
I think that's pretty fair. T-Bob had some comments about it on the morning show. We'll leave those right where they were said. But I found it pretty interesting. And one of the things that he talked about was it's kind of Derek Carr's future. Understand what that number means to the salary cap, whether he's on the team or not, and kind of your thoughts on what that decision is going to look like between the new coach, the Saints brass, and what the future may hold for the organization.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm the new coach, I'm definitely keeping him on, right? I mean, the alternative is to cut him and somehow find a way to hold on to $50 million in cap space on your team, and then also find somebody to play quarterback. This year's draft class is not very good, in my opinion. I think really the only two guys who you could really talk yourself into maybe potentially being a starting quality quarterback in the first round are probably going to be gone by the time you're picking at number 9. I don't think this is really a team that is in any position whatsoever to mortgage any sort of future assets to move up in the draft, especially for two guys who I think, frankly, have a lot of question marks to their games, in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So I think the most likely outcome, if I'm a head coach coming in, Derek Carr is far from a perfect quarterback, but he's also not terrible as much as people want to say he is. He was pretty good last year, and I think pretty good the year before that whenever he was healthy. So you just gotta probably eat the big salary hit this year. You're going to do that regardless, and at least you might have a starting caliber quality quarterback on your roster if you're going to have the big huge cap hit on your team. Really, the question is, to me, is whether they continue to use his contract as a way to push down the 2025 cap. I think that's really the only question. Do they restructure him again, pushing money into the future again? They don't have to do it. They can do it at will. They don't have to. So if they do, then he's probably just going to play out his contract here, which is through next season.
Do you think the next coach will have a say on that decision as far as the contract and the restructuring and the adding years to it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I would be, at least, let me say this, I would be surprised. I would be surprised if a new coach comes in and has a say over cap management stuff. Maybe they come in and they say hey, I would rather be in a space where we could have cap space. Let's bite a couple tough bullets here and get into a more reasonable situation. I could see that, but as far as the day-to-day decision making with how they manage the cap, I think that's still going to be down to Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley. And really, that's Mickey's baby. You got to remember, he was the cap guy before he became the GM. So these decisions are kind of his purview. Kai is the manager of it, and he makes it all work. But this is still Mickey's game.
Do you believe truly that Mickey Loomis thinks that is working at this point when you look at their roster? I mean, that's the disconnect, I think, with the fans. And when he gets up there and starts talking, is like, we know that this is what you want to do, but you hadn't been any good in 4 years. And then I guess he can pin it on injuries. Is that, you believe he just thinks this is 90%? We don't stay healthy?
Yeah, this is the hard part, right? Like, I think anybody who's looking at this roster and the way it's put together right now would have a really, really hard time seeing a path for this thing being like functionally good. Like, yes, they have good players, and yes, a lot of those good players missed on. Yeah, they would have been a completely different team for sure if Derek Carr didn't miss 7 games and Rashid Shaheed didn't miss 10 games and Chris Olave didn't miss 7, 8 games, whatever it was. Alvin Kamara didn't miss 3, 4 games at the end of the year. Like, yeah, completely different team. Totally agree. But the problem with the cap being the way it is, and with paying, they're going to pay $50 million this year in dead cap money for 3 guys that haven't played since Michael Thomas and Jameis Winston are 2 of them. They haven't played on the team since 2023, and Marshawn Lattimore hasn't played since mid 2024. Being those guys are accounting for $50 million in dead cap money. Like, that's a problem, because when you start having injuries to Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and Derek Carr, guys who are important to you, like, you don't have the resources to build up a truly deep roster, especially when you are the type of team who, like the Saints, have just been trading up in the draft for years. Like, they have such a dearth of cheap young players on the team. And then on top of that, they have no flexibility to go out and sign cheaper, younger talent to fill out the roster. So it is absolutely on them. They can say whatever they want to about it, but like, they are complicit in this, 100%.
No doubt about that, for sure. Cam Jordan, any chance he takes a pay cut?
Never say never. He doesn't really strike me as the kind of guy to take a pay cut. I think there's a reason that he's not one of them that last year when they had a number of guys do it. And I don't think really guys like doing that. But sometimes, if the writing's on the wall, and maybe he could get more here even with a pay cut than he could get elsewhere, maybe he decides to do that. But he also just seems to me like a guy who out of principle wouldn't do that sort of thing. So we'll see how that plays out.
That's one of those deals where, like, I can't blame Cam Jordan and Derek Carr for that stance. Like, you've agreed to a contract, and it's to me, it's the organization's job to uphold that. I understand the goodwill that it gives when guys do take a pay cut to try to quote unquote win to help get more players. But like, I don't put that onus on those players.
Yeah, and anybody who says they should take a pay cut, that like would you take a pay cut at your place of work? Like, I don't care how much money these guys make. Like, that's just not how. Like, that is not a good precedent to set ever for anyone. It is, and especially with the way this union works and everything like that, and with the way contracts generally work in the NFL. If guys start taking pay cuts, it's just not a good. It's not a good precedent to set, like, across the league, and that's why people almost never ever do it. And if my bosses are listening, I will never ever take a pay cut. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the head coaching search. It's in its infancy. I think things have slowed down because we know that some of the targets on the Saints list are still playing football and can't interview with them in person. So, where do you sense things are right now?
I'm going to have something post tomorrow on our site. It'll be in our Sunday edition of the paper. I have Mike McCarthy, who hasn't even spoken to the Saints about the job. Mike McCarthy and Aaron Glenn is my 2 favorites right now. And then kind of right behind those 2, Joe Brady, and then kind of behind him, Darren Rizzi, Cliff Kingsbury, and Kellen Moore. I think that's how I'd personally handicap it right now. And there's obviously, like, a lot of room for that stuff to change, because, let's just be real here. Aaron Glenn is a candidate literally everywhere right now. And I'm pretty sure he's interviewed with 4 other teams. I think the Raiders are the only one he hasn't interviewed with. Mike McCarthy, like the Bears, have shown significant interest in him. Joe Brady is a candidate a couple different places. Cliff Kingsbury might choose not to be a head coach next year at all. So like there's some ways this can go sideways a little bit. But I think if I'm the Saints, like the 2 top guys on my list are McCarthy for obvious reasons. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been very, very successful throughout his entire career. And Aaron Glenn, who, I'm not actually a huge fan of his coaching resume, but I think as a leader, as a culture setter, as somebody who has a lot of familiarity with the organization, both as a player and a coach. I think he's a really good fit, and especially for what they need right now.
I'm sure you've given no thought to this at all, but I'll toss it out there and see what your thoughts are. Do you have any idea where Dennis Allen might end up next year?
If I were him and the 49ers came calling, that's where I'd want to be. I think the Colts are an interesting one. They're the ones who've put in an interview request, and I think the other really interesting one to watch out for is Atlanta.
That'd be something.
it would really be something. Dennis has roots in Atlanta. That was where he started his coaching career, and it's also where Terry Fontenot's the GM.
Yeah.
I know they have a good relationship. The only problem with Atlanta would be they have a defensive minded head coach. I don't know if he would be the play caller there, but it's one to just like kind of keep an eye out on. So that's kind of probably how I would handicap it. Right there is San Francisco, Indy, Atlanta, kind of in that order.
We'll see.
I think he'll have a job though. I don't think he's going to go through this cycle without one by the end of it.
I would agree with that too. All right, Luke, we appreciate some time. We'll talk next week.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Luke Johnson with The Advocate at @ByLukeJohnson on Twitter. He's all over this Saints coaching search. Man, if Dennis Allen went to Atlanta, I mean, that would be. I mean, that the Falcons have kind of picked off a lot of the Saints personnel over the last 5 years, both on the coaching staff and on the defensive side of the ball. If he were to go there, man, would that make him persona non grata in New Orleans? It's once he's free. I mean, he has no obligation to stay away from the Saints' rivals. He's been fired, so he's going to take a job where he thinks it's the best fit. But that would be something to see if that in fact did happen. Hey, it's Hunt. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button. Leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.